So Matt Gaetz threatens to resign from Congress? My answer to him is good riddance. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So Matt Gaetz was the leader of the anti-McCarthy faction in the House. In fact, he nearly got into a fist fight on the floor. And even though McCarthy was ultimately able to prevail, basically by giving away everything to this hard-right faction led by Matt Gaetz, it's apparent that Gaetz feels empowered and is going to be doing everything he can to gum up the works going forward. Just check out this interview on Fox News to see what Gaetz has up his sleeves.
So, look, if we are able to get these rules
changes... Are you going to be okay, Congressman? Will you be okay then if there's ultimately a deal struck with moderate Democrats that give Democrats kind of co-control of the committees? You're fine with that?
No, absolutely not. That will not happen. There are two...
Okay, let's talk about this here for a second. Now, what Laura Ingraham was pointing to is the fact that, as I described in a prior video, the Speaker is not elected on a partisan basis. The Speaker is elected by whoever can put together 218 votes. Well, McCarthy or some other Republican candidate could have gone to the Democrats and said, look, I'll make a deal with you. I'll give you certain things you want if you're willing to come over and join me and only 5 other Republicans that were needed to elect me Speaker rather than either Hakeem Jeffries or Kevin McCarthy. And Kevin McCarthy could have done this. Now, it's obvious that Hakeem Jeffries was not going to be elected Speaker, even though the Democrats were unanimously behind him. And ironically, he actually repeatedly received more votes than McCarthy did, just not enough to reach that threshold of majority of those present and voting. So would it have been possible for some deal to be struck with Democrats to have them come across the aisle and vote for a Republican candidate? Well, I think it's quite clear that could have happened, as Laura Ingraham points out. And in fact, AOC said in an interview that she would be open to that, but that the ball was in McCarthy's court, that he'd have to come over and offer something to the Democrats to be able to get them to come over to his side. And with everything he gave way to the hard right of his party to get elected Speaker, you can only imagine what he would have given the Democrats. What's more, as has been shown repeatedly, even the most progressive among the Democratic members of Congress are actually very pragmatic and understands that half a loaf is better than no loaf at all. And so if they were able to get some serious concessions from McCarthy or some other candidate on the Republican side, they probably would have been open to it. Well, let's keep watching what Matt Gaetz has to say.
Well, that could happen.
Scenarios here. No, listen, I'm on the floor, Laura. These 212 Democrats are going to vote for Hakeem Jeffries every single time. He is a historic candidate for them. They are not going to cleave off under any circumstance. I assure you that if Democrats join up to elect...
Okay, let's be clear about something. Matt Gaetz understands the Democrats about as well as, maybe as I understand Jim Jordan. The Democrats are very pragmatic, and if they saw a chance to get something, they would have done it. And the person leading the charge on that, by the way, would have been Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries has already made history as the first person of color to lead a caucus in Congress. Would he make even more history if he were elected Speaker? Of course he would. But the Democrats understand that wasn't going to happen. They just didn't have the votes. And so if there was a chance for them to get some golden deal in exchange for their votes for either Kevin McCarthy or some other Republican candidate, I guarantee they would have done it. Let's keep watching.
A moderate Republican, I will resign from the House of Representatives. That is how certain I am. I can assure your viewers that.
Okay, well, much has been made on Twitter of Gaetz claiming that he would resign. Now, obviously, once you watch the actual interview, it's clear he had no intention of resigning. He was just using it as a rhetorical flourish to assert how certain he was of the fact that the Democrats would not come over and vote for Republican for Speaker. What's more is, I wouldn't exactly take Matt Gaetz's word anyway. I mean, Gaetz is the guy who kept saying he was a hard no for Kevin McCarthy and would not vote present, would continually vote for somebody else to make sure that Kevin McCarthy was not elected Speaker. Well, guess what ultimately happened? He voted present, thus lowering the threshold of the total number of votes that Kevin McCarthy required, and thus allowing him to get elected Speaker on the 15th ballot. So is this an indication of him resigning? Probably not. The bigger issue, though, is it shows that he's feeling his oats and knows that he's got control of Congress for the next 2 years, or at least the House, which is a scary thought. Let's keep watching.
That won't happen.
Are you for Scalise? Is Steve Scalise okay for you, or no? Steve Scalise, no?
Well, that depends on if he would accept these rules that we've spent.
Okay, let's be clear about something else. I actually laughed when I read this, which is that at one point, Matt Gaetz was so amazed at all the things that Kevin McCarthy was accepting in his desperate effort to get elected Speaker, that he was actually musing out loud about the fact that he was having trouble coming up with new ideas of things to demand from Kevin McCarthy. So much for this being some kind of principled stand where they had legitimate rules that they were trying to get passed in exchange for their support. This was them demonstrating their muscle on the floor, something that's only going to get stronger where you're not going to have that certain percentage of the quote-unquote Freedom Caucus, including Jim Jordan, for example, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who were strong supporters of Kevin McCarthy's in exchange, obviously, for promises he's made to them for committee chairmanships and the like. Let's keep watching.
A lot of time on, so we'd have to have that discussion with Steve Scalise. So far, Steve Scalise hasn't indicated that he would run. I would far prefer Jim Jordan, and if
Jim Jordan. Gee, I wonder why he's suggesting Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan, of course, is a member of the pedophile caucus, along with Matt Gaetz, which I find especially ironic given the fact that the basis for the whole Q conspiracy that is so supportive of these MAGA Republicans, including Donald Trump and Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan, asserts that its entire goal is the protection of children from pedophilia. And yet here you've got two of the leading voices in the Republican Party credibly accused of being involved in pedophilia. I'll link later on to a video on that very point. But obviously, this is just an example of the MAGA pedophile caucus sticking together. Let's keep watching.
If Kevin McCarthy pulls out of the race, I do expect Jim Jordan to mount a campaign. Oh, well, he isn't running yet. If Kevin McCarthy got out of this race and Jim Jordan would get into it, that's my belief.
Kevin McCarthy was never getting out of this race. And as I think I predicted in my video about this race earlier on, Kevin McCarthy was going to do everything he could to try to woo these people over, and eventually he'd convince them to do so, which is exactly what happened on the 15th ballot. Let's keep watching.
And I believe Jim Jordan would win. I think he would invigorate our movement. I think he's broadly trusted in every corner of the Republican Party and with a lot of our donors and supporters and activists. That's the type of option if Kevin McCarthy bows out.
You know, the sad truth is, he's probably right, actually. Jim Jordan is broadly trusted among the Republican base, which is why, by the way, Donald Trump is so beloved in the Republican base, and Matt Gaetz for that matter. These are not credible people who care about governing our country honestly and with integrity. These are self-serving pedophiles and sexual deviants who are acceptable to the Republican base for one simple fact, that they're mean and vicious and are continually making everyone else miserable around them, including Kevin McCarthy in this case. Well, let's keep watching.
If Kevin McCarthy doesn't bow out, then he will have to live the entirety of his speakership in a straitjacket constructed by these rules that we're working on now. So, look, if we are able to get these rules changed...
He's right about that, by the way, and that's exactly what did happen ultimately, is Kevin McCarthy has accepted so many restrictions and rules that have been placed upon him. Restrictions that, as I said earlier, even strained the imagination of Matt Gaetz to come up with new things he could demand from Kevin McCarthy. That Kevin McCarthy is downright irrelevant. I mean, the Rules Committee is going to be controlled by the Freedom Caucus, and the Rules Committee are the ones who decide what legislation reaches the floor when. So we could even see a situation where, with the United States facing default on its bonds, we won't even be able to get a vote in the House floor regarding increasing the debt limit. Well, if you want to see more about the Republican pedophile caucus, check out this video over here. It never ceases to amaze me, the hypocrisy of the Republicans in the candidates they're willing to support. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.